Why men are leaving the workforce? We're becoming Sigma crypto bros. Do you think that's it? So men are no longer working anymore? I mean, based, right? I mean, shit.
Men have been steadily dropping out of the workforce, especially men aged 25 to 54, who are often considered to be in their prime working years.
That's right.
As of August 2024, 13.7% of prime-age men were not working, compared to just 7.2% in 1954.
Yeah.
The long-term
That is a huge increase. That's basically it doubled.
decline in labor force participation by so-called prime-age men is a tremendous worry for our society, for our economy, and probably also for our political system.
When did they invent video games?
Of prime-age workers who could be working and aren't, and that's this puzzling problem.
The unemployment rate for prime-age working men sat at 3.4% in August 2024. This number primarily includes those who are unemployed and looking for a job. But about 10.5% of men in their prime working years, or roughly 6.8 million men nationwide, are neither working nor looking for employment.
This is an important distinction, is that unemployment can be defined in multiple ways. So, like, you have some people that are unemployed because they work seasonally, some people that are unemployed because of an industry change, some people that are unemployed because they can't find a job, and then you also have people that are unemployed and also not looking for employment. So, whenever you see what these numbers are, you have to be very careful. This, though, is the number that you're looking for, is the not employed and not looking to be employed.
Compared to just 2.5% in 1954.
What's surprising is it's not a COVID phenomenon. It's not a recession phenomenon.
And for every prime-age man who is unemployed and looking for a job, there are more than 3, and some years 4, who are neither working nor looking for work.
So what's driving men out of the workforce? And if left unchecked, what impact will it have on the U.S. economy?
Let's see why. What do
Nearly
they think?
half of prime-age men out of the workforce cited obsolete skills, lack of education and training, poor work record, or security issues as a reason preventing them from work.
Education is a very important predictor of a prime-age man's odds of being out of the
I think that makes sense for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Too many women in the workforce? I mean, I don't know. I feel like women have been in the workforce for quite a while, right? I mean, like the 90s, I'm sure there were a lot of women working, right? And so, like, how has it gone down from there?
labor force.
The big impacts are on the non-college educated groups on their ability to enter and stay in the labor market.
Men who are not
that's where the issue is. It's definitely there because it's the guys that don't have any sort of like college degree. They don't have any formal education. There used to be a lot of jobs that you could do that didn't require that. But the fact is that now I feel like a lot of those jobs are being automated or they are not as important as they were. They're not needed as much. It's like back in the day, you could work at a factory and then, you know, bolt nuts onto a Ford. But you don't need to do that anymore because they have a robot that does that. So it's like, where do those people go? At a certain point, nowhere. What the fuck? You can't automate trades. You can, but it's just that we're so far off, it's not realistic for it to happen. Also, being a plumber or being like a carpenter, like that's really hard work, man. And so a lot of people aren't really going to want to do that. Yeah, I mean, I understand that, like, yeah, you can make a good amount of money doing that. Some people do, but yeah, it's hard to do that.
College educated leave the workforce at higher rates than men who are.
Yeah, of course.
At the same time, fewer younger men have been enrolling in college over the past decade.
If you look at the
well, that's not really a big surprise when you see initiatives that are given that privilege women. Like, I see this all the time, where it's like, well, this is some sort of initiative that's made to get more women to go to college or get more women to be involved with something. Big fucking surprise, you're going to see men that aren't going to be as enrolled in college. It makes sense. Of course. It's an incel take. That's an incel take. It's a fact. It's a fucking fact. Like, how many times do you ever see articles and like initiatives that companies do that are like getting more women involved with X, Y, or Z thing? All the fucking time. all the fucking time. And so, yes, if you're a guy, like, women have these innate advantages that these companies are putting out there. They're putting money up to give them an advantage. So, yes, obviously men are at a disadvantage, because if you're competing against somebody that has a head start or some sort of advantage over you, then now it's harder for you to compete. It's very simple. It's more than that. It's not about initiatives. Females outperform males academically, average as early as high school. Sure, I'm saying, like, that's definitely probably a factor, but you're talking about college. I'm not talking about high school. Are they trying to rectify the historical disadvantage? Well, rectifying a historical disadvantage by disadvantaging a different group of people, this is not virtuous. Like, you're not rectifying anything, because what happened to somebody 50 years ago isn't what's happening now. Like, if you're applying an unfair standard onto a person because of something that they didn't do, then you're treating them unfairly. It's really simple.
Geography of where the most prime age men out of the labor force are in particular, they tend to be in places that have experienced manufacturing declines.
Exactly. It's because, there's no, like, physical, like, labor jobs that are not super intensive that are low skill that men can have because they've been automated.
To graduate with a high school education and have good,
the same thing's going to happen
jobs.
with women,
too. They weren't
too.
Glamorous jobs. They were, automobile factories, sometimes mines, other manufacturing jobs, but they were respected, they were stable, and they could support a family.
That's another really big component that a lot of people might not realize, is that people had a manufacturing job where they would just put bumpers on Fords. And this guy made what would be equivalent to the over $100,000 a year. This is a guy, it's like you go back and you watch old sitcoms, and it's the guy that works in a factory, and he owns a house, a boat, a car, and he has a wife and 2 kids, and the wife stays at home. How do you think that happens?
Then, due to technology-driven growth, a little bit due to Chinese competition, you've had a lot of manufacturing firms, and the places where they were located that that were one-horse towns become ghost lands, right?
Yeah, like Detroit.
Wages could also be a contributing factor. Median annual wages for men with a high school diploma have fallen from just over $57,600 in 1973 to $45,000 in 2023.
That is a crazy amount. Like, again, like, you think about that number, like, what is the math on that? Like, almost 20%. Yeah, it's almost about 20%. It's going to, like, think about that. 20%. That's crazy. Huge fucking reduction. It's like if you cut off somebody's leg, that's 20% of their body weight. 20% is massive. Add inflation. I think this is probably adjusted for inflation.
Adjusted for inflation. At the same time, wages for those with a bachelor's degree or more have increased by about $6,300 during the same period. This decline in earnings led to a 44%.
Because nobody needs people with no skills and no education anymore. And this is going to become a bigger problem. Every single year it will become a bigger problem. And eventually, in like 20 or 30 years, I think that we are going to be running into a existential threat that a person will no longer be able to reasonably expect to gain employment. I think it's happening because there are so many things that are becoming automated. It's more than 20%. It's a 20% reduction when it should have been a gain of 20%. No, it's adjusted for inflation. This is what's going to happen, right? Because, like, you think about it, how many of you guys, like, I'm 34. How many of you guys remember having your mom take you to the supermarket whenever you were a kid and 15 aisles were open? You guys remember that? You go to Albertsons, you go to Walmart, you go to Costco, go to Sam's Club, Publix, right? H-E-B here in Texas. Now how many lines are open? Like 3, maybe? Like 3? Like 2 or 3, somewhere around there, right? And so that's what happens. And so where did all of those people go? Well, nowhere. They're gone. Their job's gone. Also, think about, like, whenever I was a kid and I would go to like McDonald's, there would be more people behind the counter than there are now. And this is happening everywhere. Self-checkout. Well, what I'm saying is that self-checkout is a form of automation. And everything is, it's going to be cost-cutting. Exactly, mobile orders. There's a bunch of stuff. Self-service checkout. And so all of these things are done in order to remove people that are unskilled workers from the workforce. And another reason is that with unskilled workers, most of them are, you're going to have a high, listen, I mean, I think Taco Bell uses AI to take your orders now. And the reason why I think that is because they keep getting my order right. This used to never happen. And now I'm always getting the right food? No, something is wrong here. And I think they're using AI. Wendy's too? Yeah, they're all doing it. And this is what's happening. Carl's Jr., yeah. And so, well, where's that person? What's that person going to do? Now they're gone. So that's where the issue comes in. That's where the problem happens. And you're seeing automation and technology removing unskilled labor jobs from the market at a ratio that is way faster than those jobs. Like, because the difference between, like, sorry, I'm going off on a big tangent here, but like, you can compare this abstractly to the Industrial Revolution, right? Because we're having a second revolution. But the Industrial Revolution was done as a means to an ends of producing more of a product. So the goal was not necessarily to reduce the amount of workers, it was more or less to increase the amount of product. Whereas automation and, AI, the entire purpose of it is to reduce the workforce. That is the primary goal for something like Flippy. Flippy is done, he exists so McDonald's doesn't have to hire somebody to reduce costs. Yes, exactly. And that's what's happening. And so that's, and I think that men, and it's especially true with physical labor jobs, right? Like manufacturing. These were jobs that low education men would always have. And I think that this is also a reason too. It's like, again, take a step back. This is the reason why you see such a massive resurgence of like red pill stuff. This is why you see people like Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, and all of these people that are like trying to provide like a world outlook for men. Because now there's no path that an uneducated man is going to be able to take that's going to help him. Right? Internet dads. Yeah, like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no way that things are going to get better for this kind of a person. They're just fucked.
Growth in the exit rate of men without a college degree from the workforce between 1980 and 2019.
I think, honestly, status plays more of a role than wages. As I said before, you had a manufacturing job. It was respected. You were part of a community, breadwinner for your family. You had organizations like unions or Rotary clubs that surrounded your job. And that's gone.
In general, men without children are also less likely to participate in the workforce compared to men with children.
Of course.
Especially men without education or training after high school.
What we have...
Yeah, there's a word for that. Not in education, training, or technology. Not in, it's interesting.
Seen is a huge rise in the proportion of prime-age men who've never been married, and a very, very significant decline in the proportion who are currently married and have kids at home. And those two trends track closely with the big changes that we've seen about male attachment in the labor force. Correlation isn't always causation, but looking at that
it's obviously a factor. Like, I mean, I know plenty of people that are like, I don't want to get married or do anything like that because I can't even take care of myself. Like, you're not really in a position, because like, this is the thing, is that culturally, like, we can all pretend like this isn't the case, but it's been the case for thousands of years, because this is the way our biology is that the man is supposed to provide for the woman. That's the way it works. That's how it works in almost every single, animal colony, at least of mammals. This is the way it works for people. This is the way it's worked in pretty much all cultures. And yeah, that's the reason, because women have kids and they're weaker and smaller, and men have to provide for them while they take care of the kids. So if a man can't provide for his wife, then he's not going to be looking for a wife. Or at least there's a lower probability of it. Because like we act like, oh yeah, we're beyond this. Oh, we're past this. No, we're not. No, we're not. Biology says that we're not past this. If you look at the entire, look at the entire history of human beings, 99.999% of all of the time that we have been people, that paradigm has been used. It's not going to go away. That's it. You can't escape nature. Yes. And so if a man can't provide for a family, then he's not going to try to look for a family. It's that simple. Now, that's not always true, and there's plenty of broke dudes with baby mamas everywhere. However, overall, it will lead to a decline because the conscientious ones will decide not to do it.
Respondents is real important, I think.
Meanwhile, 57% of the roughly 10% of men not looking for work said their physical or mental health was the main reason for not being employed, with 55% citing a disability, serious illness, and or receiving disability benefits.
The whole question about the health and the mental health of male workforce dropouts is an extremely important and I think concerning one.
I think this is, again, like the reason why you see like men's like those alpha male boot camps that like guys had, and like they're all crying in the pool together and everybody's laughing at them. The problem is that men are not really, like, they're not given spaces where they can grow as a person in a way that's healthy. And I think that they look for spaces like that, and they find it on the internet, or they find it with like different types of like, these like male like fitness influencers, etc. But like if you think back at like a lot of ancient cultures and the way that like even our culture used to be, right? There was a lot more of a traditional, some form of initiation ritual, things like the military, things like some form of civil service, like, the CCC and other types of like New Deal things from like the 40s. And so there were a lot of other ways that we approached this problem. And now there really aren't any. Yeah, there's coming of age rituals. Yeah, exactly. There aren't any. And the like how to be a man is a question that apparently nowadays most people can't answer. And I think the problem is that like nobody knows that, and the entire popular media is polluted with basically bad role models. It's basically like, and it's not that Andrew Tate is a bad role model with everything. There are a lot of things that Andrew Tate says that I think are true. Same with Jordan Peterson. But the problem is that none of them really are the model character for the person that you want to be. And I think that's all the issue too, is because if you don't even know what your own identity is, how can you go after it? You see what I'm saying? And so people, like a man has been divorced from their identity. They've been divorced from having ownership over their own body. They've been divorced from being able to have any sort of like a future. And the problem is that you can say, oh, well, just go to college. I'm going to give you guys the honest truth. The bottom 20% of intelligence of people are not going to be able to have jobs because they're too stupid to make decisions. They're just stupid. They're not, like, you can't just put somebody in Harvard and then after 4 years, they're going to become a neuroscientist. There are lots of people that are just stupid, and there's no fixing this, right? Or at least not right now. Yeah, there's no fixing this. Oh, you can't say that. No, it's just how it is, right? It's the bell curve. It's the same with everything. It's the same. There's some people that are 7 feet tall and some people that are 4 feet tall. That's the way it is. Some people with a lot of hair, some people without so much. Some people are really black, some people are really white. That's it. And so everything is like that. And, some people are really smart. Some people are really stupid. Like, there are so many pieces and, like, ways this comes together. More than 50% of college degrees are worthless as well. Don't forget that men are also more likely to be addicted to drugs and alcohol. Addiction can play a role. Yeah, but why are they getting addicted to drugs and alcohol? I think that they're getting addicted. A lot of people that I think get addicted to substances like that do it as a form of escape. They do it because they're unhappy with their life. Now, you obviously have some people that are just, addictive personality is just what they do, right? But I don't think it's as common.
Stressing proportion of the men who are out of the workforce say they're using pain medications every day.
Jesus Christ.
A 2017 research paper estimates that an increase in opioid prescription between 1999 to 2015 led to about 43% of the decline in men's labor force participation rate during that period.
So then you have to ask, what sort of...
It's because people aren't active anymore, too. That's another big factor. Like John F. Kennedy had like a lot of initiatives and things like this to like get guys active, especially like high school age guys. And like back in school, for a lot of people now, they don't have to do PE anymore. And so now you have people like this is again, like going back to it's again, return to monkey. Back in the caveman days, men were physically active all of the time. And I bet how many of you guys, whenever you were a kid, you were physically active like 5 hours a day. You were going around, running around, you're out in the backyard, you're going over to your friend's house, you're riding your bike around, you're doing all kinds of crazy shit, right? More like 8 hours a day, right? Yeah, we were all like this. And now you're probably not as much. Well, that's the way that people are supposed to be. And you can see this with like any sort of uncontacted or any sort of, older tribe. Like you go look at an African tribe, they're running around like fucking crazy. They're moving around constantly. None of them are just sitting around doing nothing all day. And so again, it's going back to return to monkey. People have been divorced from the fulfillment of physical activity. You see what I'm talking about here? It's about momentum. Yeah, it's about people moving, right? You're moving your body. You're moving, you're stretching your arms, right? It's like I like that's one of the reasons why, like for me, whenever I was having back trouble, I said I refuse to take painkillers for this. I will not take painkillers for this. I'm going to exercise in these different ways because I think the human body is made to move. It's made to heal itself and it's made to improve. And that's what I did. And I'm still in the process of doing that now, even. Standing desks are goated? Yeah, that's what you do. And if I see a lot of people, by the way, if you see a lot of people that are exercising, and I'm not talking about bodybuilders that like die of like heart complications, but I'm talking about like people that are physically fit and physically active. Those people live to be 90. Those are the ones that live a really long time. The ones that are physically active. Yeah, take up an activity. Yeah, exactly. Fight Club was right. Well, in some ways, right? But like what I'm saying is that that's a huge factor. And I think also like then like being fat or being out of shape, like then this creates a feedback loop of not having confidence because I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm skinny, I'm ugly, I don't look right. Now I can't really get a girlfriend. Now people don't like me as much, right? And so you see how like all of this has created like a perfect storm for men to completely lose any form of identity they have. That's what I think has happened. And it's actually such an existential spiritual problem, but it manifests in like very physical ways. Like, for example, being fat or not being able to have a job or not having a girlfriend. But all of these are symptoms of a spiritual disease. I know this sound like I'm using kind of like big terms here, but I really do think this is what's happening.
Pain are we talking about? Are we talking about physical pain? Are we talking about metaphysical pain? There's an enormous amount of depression, mental health challenges that men in this grouping face.
Yeah, but why do they get depression? No, that's the question. Because, like, yeah, being able to acknowledge that it's mental health and depression, great, true, yeah, right? But, like, why?
of this is a chicken and egg question.
Yeah.
Did you drop out because you were feeling sad, or are you sad because you dropped out and you're living on the couch?
Unemployment is really terrible for people's well-being. Often people adapt to all kinds
I think a lot of people, it's probably that there isn't a social support network for them either way. There's not a support network for them being in school, and there's also not a support network for them to get back into school or education in another form, right? Like a trade. Men don't have that, sadly. Yeah, and I think that's one of the big issues. And I think that that's why there's like a growing resentment I think a lot of men have towards women, which is women, it seems like, have a lot more like social structures and social like networks that exist for their benefit that men don't really have access to. I think it's a huge problem.
negative shocks, losing a kid, being widowed, whatever, and eventually kind of come back. But long-term unemployment is one of the worst things in terms of that. So what you have is a kind of scarring effect, and it's worse for men because their identity is much more wrapped up in their role as a worker.
Well, of course, the reason why a man's identity is wrapped up as a role as a worker, again, I feel like I'm, like I'm saying the obvious thing that nobody can acknowledge is true. It's because a man is expected to take care of his family and provide for a family. A woman's not expected to do that in the same way. That's because of biology. You're not going to rewrite this. It's not going to change next week. There's not going to be a law written that makes this better. This is the way that people are hardwired and programmed down to a genetic level. So the reason why men being divorced from the ability to earn a living is an existential spiritual problem is because the ability to earn a living is their ability to reproduce. Fundamentally.
Declining workforce participation can potentially leave a lasting impact on the American economy.
It means slower growth of the economy, obviously. It means bigger wealth gaps within our society.
It certainly will have an impact on our productivity and probably already is.
The U.S. has been experiencing a severe shortage in labor.
This is going to keep getting worse, by the way.
Missing 1.7 million Americans from the workforce compared to February 2020.
Yep.
The McKinsey Global Institute estimates that U.S. GDP could have been $296 to $442 billion higher in 2023 if the country had been able to fill its job vacancies.
A lot of people just don't want to do shitty jobs.
However, some experts suggest the impacts of men leaving or never entering the workforce could be more sector-specific.
You need young men.
Well, it's also people not getting paid enough fucking money, right? Like if you like, oh yeah, you want to go work at McDonald's and be called a loser by basically everybody in society and get paid a shit wage and have to do one of the hardest jobs. Like, I'm sorry, but like streaming is hard in a lot of ways, but I feel like there's almost no fucking job that's harder than working in a kitchen. That's my opinion. Like, I had to work in a kitchen before for a very, very short period of time. I've got my name tag for it right here. And it was absolutely fucking awful. I couldn't imagine living like that regularly. Like, I quit immediately, basically. Oil rig? Well, the thing is, if you're working on an oil rig, you're probably getting paid, $180,000, $250,000 a year, right? So you're getting huge money. So, like, yeah, obviously, like, this is very dangerous. It's scary, but you're getting paid a lot of money. Not really? How much does a roughneck make on an oil rig? So it's looking like the average is $47 a year, and the salary for the top 10 cities is all over $110,000. 47. Oh, sorry, not $47 a year. That's for making Nike. Over in Malaysia, no, $47 an hour.
Place those people going
Sector specific.
You need young men coming in wanting to replace those people going out. And so if men have...
I think this is another factor, is that now that we have better health services and we have better health in general, boomers are staying in and older Gen X are staying in the workforce longer than people that were before them were staying in the workforce as well, because they maintain health for a longer period of time.
Primarily been in more manual labor, more blue skilled and skilled trades. If they're older and they're leaving into retirement and there's not as many young men coming in, both because of declining cohort sizes, but moving in a different direction type of careers, we're going to be losing that sector of productivity.
Despite a steep rise in federal funding, the infrastructure sector hasn't been able to find enough workers, with the construction workforce shortage surpassing 500,000 in 2024.
Jesus.
We are a little concerned about the impact that inflation is going to have and has had on the movement of infrastructure dollars into the actual productive activity. Having a shortage of men in construction is going to raise a problem.
The trend could have a dire socio-political impact as well.
It'll get worse in ways that we would not like. I mean, I think it would lead to
increase the pay. Well, the problem is inflation effectively is doing the opposite. So it's like, there are a lot of guys that work, like, my understanding of construction, which is like kind of disconnected, is that if you're like on the ground, you're probably making okay money, but the foreman is making pretty good money, and the guy that the foreman answers to is making really good money, and the guy above that is like a millionaire. So, like, construction does have a lot of money in it, but again, the guy that's above the foreman, that guy is like probably a top 10% intelligence person. So, like, if you're in that bottom 20% and you're kind of stupid, you're never going to make it up that ladder. It's just not going to happen. Not all in the top 10. Not all. Well, I mean, like, in general, right? You're going to have people, like, there is clearly a correlation between high status jobs and jobs that require, like a lot of thinking and intelligence, right? And IQ. Like that, fucking obviously. Construction's hard on the body, though. Not enough young people want to do that to themselves. I think so. I think more people would do it if it paid more. Definitely. Nepotism overrides everything in skill. Look, listen, there's always going to be factors that are out of your control. But if you want to talk about that, you're right. But I'm talking about averages. If you want to look at averages here, those guys that are millionaires or, they're very close to it through construction, these people are not stupid. They are not stupid people. They're not like some dumbass idiot. Like, these are people that understand a lot of shit.
Premature deaths, but it will also likely lead to radicalization and polarization. Because this is a frustrated, left-behind group with no options.
Yeah.
There are problems that government can address.
They'll never have a solution, and men that are unskilled will become increasingly less worthwhile and important, and we will be entering in a time where a person's value is basically the value of their body parts sooner than later as these jobs become less and less possible to do. That's what's happening. They're not coming back. They're not going to be back. The only way that they could come back is if we had some sort of neo-feudalism serfdom. That's it.
And problems that government can't address.
So one of the first functions that beats out policy is, economic growth. You have a strong economy, you're going to have increased wage structure, and it's going to bring people back into the market.
More than a quarter of prime age men.
I don't think that's true. I think that's not true anymore, at least, because the jobs that are being added into the workforce are very high skill and very technical. It's not like we're having like a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built, right? A lot of like unskilled jobs. Like, yeah, there is job growth, but it's in jobs that are highly technical or jobs that are extremely demanding, like construction.
Not looking for work, cited insufficient pay as a reason preventing them from work. And nearly half said competitive pay, salary, compensation, and or bonuses was a very important factor when considering whether to enter or return to the workforce.
Yeah, because a man in our society, if you don't make a lot of money, you're considered to be a loser. That's one of the biggest indicators of success in our culture is money.
For the young, better training, skills training, better some form of post-high school education, encouraging that, maybe even subsidizing that. I think part of the youth mental health crisis has to do with what's next. What's AI going to do? What am I going to do? Are there any stable jobs? I can't afford college. All those questions all come together. And so models that help them kind of give them a jump start can be really effective ways of intervening. And there are actually now really promising programs in high schools which teach kids financial literacy. They teach them about equitable entrepreneurship. They teach them about how do you foster better mental health as part of the workplace. And it seems to inspire kids to go on to college, right? Because they sort of see a pathway where they didn't see it before.
29.
I do want to say that the problem that I'm talking about, where it's like dumb people that won't be able to find employment because there are no jobs, this is an unsolvable problem. You're not going to be able to educate this out of them. Like, it's just not going to happen. So, but like, there are a lot of people that are not part of that are still affected by this, and it does help them.
Percent of men out of the labor force said that training and educational programs was another important factor in considering a return to the workforce.
Having the type of commitment from the employer to train and retain and offer upward mobility for workers, I think, will be very important.
I think that upward mobility and the lack thereof is a really big factor. And I think that now that the internet has given people an extra level of awareness, I think that you see now how much nepotism and how much unfairness there is in the workforce and in life. So when you see how this happens all the time, it serves as a massive, massive, massive demotivator. Now, obviously, you still have to do that. You clearly have to, and you can succeed despite that. But seeing people succeed when they don't deserve it is very demotivating for a lot of average guys. Yeah, like it really is awful, me being a personal victim to it. Yeah, I mean, and I think that it happens to everybody. And it's not even just like, there's also like, okay, like I've seen plenty of memes and it's like, okay, you're at a construction, it's a construction work site. And it's like the, it shows like all the different guys that are working there. It's like the old guy that's like working, he's doing his best. The young guy who's like kind of stupid. And then it shows like, it's like the foreman's son. And he's like this. Like I get it, right? I definitely get it. And so like you see that happen. And then guess what? Yeah, in the car, right? Yeah, he's sitting in the car. That's obviously extremely demotivating. And so as a guy, when you see that happen and you feel like you don't have these advantages for yourself, then, what the fuck are you going to do? And it's a massive demotivator. And I'm not saying like, because obviously like you have to keep working even though that's true. Like it's not an excuse to just stop working. But for a lot of people, it's a pretty big reason. That's how postal service works, working for mom and dad. I think that there's a lot of things like this.
Figure out more about career pathways in the labor market and not just the education side. So how is it that someone moves from first job, next job to best job? How do we help people understand and navigate?
It's like if there's no light at the end of the tunnel, don't be surprised if people don't want to get in the tunnel. Fucking obviously.
Quarter of working Americans said they weren't satisfied with their growth opportunities in the workplace.
Yeah, I'm surprised
to
it's
other
not more.
OECD countries that on average spend 0.1% of their GDP on training their workers. The US spent only 0.03% of their GDP on job training in 2022.
Older age groups, it's tougher. You're probably not going to get these guys to retrain, but you can there are a lot of programs that have largely been pioneered in the UK, much more than here, but we're starting to pick up on them, that literally just try and reboot community activities.
This is something that was very popular in like the 40s with FDR. He did this a lot, and it was like generally, even now, like it's looked back on as a positive, right? It is. And somebody said, let me see if I can read this real quick. I don't know where it was, but yeah, somebody said basically if you think other people's success is your failure, then you deserve to fail. That's not true. Like if you have one promotion that's at your office and the person that gets it for a reason they shouldn't have gotten it for, there is absolutely a zero-sum environment that you operate in. To say otherwise is so disingenuous. Absolutely, it is a zero-sum environment. with a lot. There is scarcity of everything. And if somebody gets something, in a lot of cases, it means you're not getting it. That's just how it is.
Get these isolated people in despair out of their houses. It can make a difference.
Social programs like disability benefits spark contentious debate.
It's very controversial. People have very strong opinions about this. While we don't know why it is happening, we can be pretty clear that the social welfare programs are helping and the disability programs.
It's a cultural issue too. I think a lot of it for men is a cultural issue. Where like there's always discussions around toxic masculinity, all the things that men are doing wrong. It's popular in media to have men look like idiots in sitcoms. There are advantages and programs that are existent for the benefit of women, but not for men. There are a lot of things, like, especially if you're a young guy, you feel like the odds are stacked against you. And I think that's true. Like, there's a lot of massive disadvantages that men have. Being a man's very hard. I mean, I've said before, I'm so glad I'm a guy and not a girl, right? Like, I am so glad. I would not want to be a girl, right? Because I think it's worse. But as a young guy, especially, like, I'm 34 now, right? So, like, I'm not in that part of my life anymore. But as a guy who's 20, think about the opportunities that women have when they're 20, and think about the opportunities that men have whenever they're 20. They're very different. And for a lot of you guys, how many of you guys are like around my age, and you've seen that pendulum swing, right? Where like there are those women that you knew in high school, maybe, or college, that, you know, were getting all of these advantages and benefits, and now they're not anymore. And there's men now that are doing very well. Yeah, exactly. I've seen it. I see it, right? And like the thing is that, like, but a young man, a 20 and 19-year-old guy, isn't going to see that. He's not going to see that because he had, like, he's not 40 yet. He's not 35. He's not 30 yet. So that's the problem. Late game glow up. There it is. Yeah, men have really good late game scaling.
Helping to finance this situation in a way that was never originally intended.
A 2018 analysis by the Joint Economic Committee found that 64% of prime-age men who aren't working were receiving some sort of government assistance.
So the one benefit that they rely heavily on is disability insurance. One, because they often are unable to work if they have a physical injury or high levels of addiction or whatever. But it also provides health insurance, which is huge.
Very much against the initial intentions of the founders of the program. They've ended up with a perverse situation that too often subsidizes or even incentivizes helplessness and long-term dependence. If we thought
it's inevitable. I don't think that there's any way around having some sort of universal basic income. I feel like it is inevitable. We either have to have that or we have to kill a bunch of people. Like most people, basically. We can't afford it. Well, then you have to kill them. Because, like, if you don't kill them, then they'll kill you. Because they don't have any money. They have nothing to lose. That's just what's going to happen. Well, no, I'm just saying, like, that's just what's going to happen. Like, you can't have a massive underclass of people that has no purchasing power, that effectively is a slave class. This is a recipe for disaster. Like, it is. Like, it's not going to work. Isn't that scary? Well, I'm just saying, like, that's what's going to happen. Causes civil unrest. Think about how it was in 2020 with all those riots.
About a system in which we had a work-first principle where the incentives were for getting the training.
French Revolution filter? French Revolution was against the royalty versus aristocracy. It was not, the French Revolution was not the poor people going and killing the rich people. It was the rich people killing the royalty.
And then showing up at the job and then staying at the job. I think we'd be in a lot better place than we are today.
However,
using the
some experts
portified.
remain
Yeah, exactly.
doubtful about whether altering the benefits program will lead to meaningful results.
I think until we deal with the deeper problem of ill health, ill mental health, these guys aren't going to respond to incentives.
Everybody is responsible for their, for their brothers. Everybody's responsible for their neighbors and their friends.
No, they're not.
And we ourselves as
just not gonna happen.
citizens can help to shine a spotlight on this. It shouldn't be America's invisible problem. And the more that we talk about it, the more that we pay attention to it, the closer we get to turning this around.
I'm going to be honest. This is going to be very, very toxic masculinity. I think that we indulge people's mental health too much. I think that we listen to how people feel too much. Suck it the fuck up and deal with it. Be a fucking man. Stop being a bitch. I don't know when the idea of being stoic and working hard and being able to control yourself and rise above your emotions was seen as a bad thing, but enabling that type of behavior just creates losers. That's it. Yep, losers lose. That's right. Sound like me? Yep. Life difficulty too high, need easy mode? I guess so, yeah. And I think also, like, if you hold people to, like, low standards, you're going to have them meet those standards. This was a good video. I think that the problem is that any sort of mainstream publication that talks about this topic always has to talk around the topic. They're always talking around the topic, and they're not understanding and really digging deep into, like, the cultural problems that men face and how those cultural problems contrive the way a male sees the world. Because it's massive, right? It's like if you're a guy, you're going on dating apps and, like, you can't get a girlfriend, you can't get a job, you feel like life is against you. It sucks. Yeah, it's absolutely bad. And so the problem also is, like, media, I think, does a very bad job at presenting positive male role models, because there's a lot of issues where it's like, what is being a man? What is being masculine? Nobody fucking knows. That's the problem. The way that I look at everything is that I try to see everything, and every bad thing that happens to me, I view it as being my fault. Like, that is the way I start my investigation into a problem. I think, how did I cause this to happen? Because that takes the locus of control and it puts it on your side of the court. That gives you the agency. Now you have control. You see what I'm saying? And I think also there are times that you can work backwards from that and come to the conclusion that it actually wasn't your fault and you didn't do anything wrong. But that's not the good way to start. And I think that nowadays a lot of self-help is about teaching people different pleasant versions of learned helplessness. It's everything is okay. Oh, well, like, the world is against you, and so that's why you're failing. Oh, well, men have it harder. That's why you're failing. And there's always some sort of external force that's holding you down. I think this is what happens with identity politics, too. It's like, well, the reason why you can't get a job is because they're giving all your jobs to women and trans people. Like, yeah, I'm sure that happens sometimes, but there's plenty of people that look like you that have a job, too, so why aren't you one of them, right? And so a lot of times the problem is that a lot of these lies are based, what? What do you mean, what? It's absolutely true. What are we talking about? Like, I mean, listen. I like just talking about things directly. I don't like talking around them. I don't like using euphemisms. I don't like using pleasantries. I try to just speak fucking plain English, right? And in plain English, that's what it fucking is. That's the way people think. And so, yeah, no beating around the bush. Exactly. You do understand the South African situation? Your brain would explode? I do not want to understand that. Fuck that. Working class have been disenfranchised from work. Well, the reason why the working class have been disenfranchised from work is because they're not getting paid for it. Like, if you look at productivity and what a person has to do now versus what they had to do 30 years ago, you have to do way more work and you're getting paid less money. Why the fuck would you want to do that? It's not even a question. I'll be right back.